started here, huh? So it's a pleasure to meet you all. If you don't already know me, my name is Elisande. I stream video games and web development and kind of whatever is, I guess, tickling my fancy at the time, but today it's going to be web development. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're going to be building here. Turn the music down just slightly, maybe. Some of the more hardcore parts of the Hades soundtrack right here, so maybe about right there, huh? What do you think? So what we're going to be building today, I have a build tracker that I wrote years ago in a framework called Meteor, which I don't think is used anymore. I don't know if they're still maintaining it, but certainly the hype around it has died off a lot. But I built this app as it's something I needed, but I mostly built it in order to play around with Meteor. And to their credit, the app worked for years without having to make any changes because it's relatively simple. And then just recently, either Mongo or Meteor or something made a change that broke the app and it doesn't work anymore. And so I need to rewrite it. And the current thing I'm interested in are two things I've been hearing a lot about. One is a web framework called Remix. I've played with Remix a little bit. I wrote an app for my WoW guild to do some group matching. But it was a pretty simplistic thing as well. And it was built on top of a database that I already had set up that a Discord bot was talking to. And so it was a relatively simple web app that was using a backend that already existed. For this one, it's going to be a little bit different. I don't think the web app is going to be too complex, maybe 2 or 3 views maximum. The original web app only had 1, but it also was missing some functionality that it probably should have had. And instead of using a Firebase backend like I used for my other one, we're going to use Prisma. So if you haven't heard about Prisma, it's kind of interesting. It's an ORM, which allows you to use an object model to communicate with your database, but it's got a lot of interesting features that make it, I don't know, pretty cool. You define your schema in code and it can automatically migrate your database. And it generates a client to your database with a strongly typed client that allows you to not have to write any mapping code or anything like that. It's pretty interesting. But those are the hot sell features, right? Those are the things that it's like, oh yeah, you should use it because it does this thing, right? So the question is, what's wrong with it, right? What does it not do well? And that's what I don't know yet. So I'm sure we're going to run into that as we get through. Now let's talk about where we are right now. Let's switch over to the app. So this is what we've got at the moment. It's all this is the Remix starter with no code added or very little code added. And then I went through just enough of the Prisma documentation to get it connected to my database. And that's all. So we have this, let's see. We have this Prisma schema that has exactly 2 fields, an ID and a name. And then I just added a query. Oh, hold on. Helps if I go to the editor here. So we have this schema here. We have an object called Bill with an ID and a name. And then in the loader function, I added a query to our database that I just put in a console log to make sure that it works. And that's it. That's all that's set up so far. So we're really starting kind of from scratch here. And yeah, that's where we're going to go. Now I talked a little bit about Prisma. Let's talk a little bit about Remix. So Remix is a web development framework. It's ultimately based on React. So you'll see here, this is the standard React style. We're returning some JSX down here that does some stuff. But in addition to the normal front end stuff that React does, they also have some server-side components. And you write these in the same file, but they get executed in different places. So this part down here, the JSX, this will happen on our front end and it'll get rendered inside of our component here. But then we have a couple of these other functions. We've got links function, loader function, and action function. So what these things do is links what it does is when this component is loaded, it will actually go into the head portion of our HTML and it will add a link of rel equals style sheet with the that will pull in the CSS. And so this is not using a CSS and JS kind of pattern. It's using actual CSS, but the style sheets get loaded and unloaded dynamically by Remix. So that's some extra stuff that it does on the front end. Now here's some stuff that it does on the back end. It's got this loader function and this action function. What the loader function says is when this component is rendered, right, or when this page is rendered, actually, we'll talk a little bit more about how it deals with pages. I want you to load some information first, right? And in this case, I'm not doing anything with the information, but we're doing prisma.bill.findMany and passing in no parameters. So this grabs all the bills in our database, and then we're just logging it right now. And then you can return some information from your loader, and you're able to use that in your component, which we'll definitely end up doing here very shortly. Then there's this action function. So action is the kind of the pair to loader. So action says, when I post something from this page using a form, execute some code on my server, and then return a redirect. So this is where we'll be able to we'll use these action functions in order to modify our bills, right? To be able to add new bills, delete bills, update bills, whatever it is we're going to do with those things. So that's what action loader function do, and we'll end up talking more about this stuff as we go on. Now, in terms of how this is structured, Remix has a specific folder called routes. Routes has a very specific mapping to the URLs in your application. So in here, in routes, index.tsx, this is going to map to root /, right? So if we switch over to our app view again, oh, I guess I'm not showing the URL in the bar. Hold on a minute. Yeah. So you can see at the top here, right? The URL is just localhost /, right? And so the names of our files in this route folder correspond to the URLs that they will be in our app. And you can customize that through Remix's config and stuff like that. But that's the default, and I'm probably going to be mostly going with the defaults. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about what I want the app to do, and then we'll get into the development here. So the idea behind this app is it's a bill tracker. What does that mean? It means I want to put in my monthly bills or my bills in there, and have it show me how much the bill is approximately, a link to the website so I can go to pay it, and a button that I can click to mark the bill paid. And when I mark the bill paid, I want it to automatically schedule the next time I need to pay the bill, right? To show me like, hey, next month you're going to need to pay this bill as well. So that's all I really want. It's relatively simplistic. And I know there are things like QuickBooks that can do this for you, but that's way overkill for what I want. So I'm just going to build up this bill tracker. Okay, so let's look at our schema here again real quick. For now, we just have an auto incrementing ID and a name. I've got a couple of other properties like the website, the amount, whether or not it's paid, and the due date. These come from the old model or the old app that I had built, so we're probably going to end up using those, but we'll stick with this for now. And then I do have a couple of entries already in the database just to be able to test that this find many was working. And so I think maybe where we'll start is seeing if we can render the bills that we have, and then we'll start seeing if we can, modify them, and we'll update our schema as we go along and things like that. All right. So we already have this prisma.bill.findMany. This should be returning all of our bills, but right now we're just logging it out. So now in Remix, if you want to get this loader information into your app, you need to return it. And so what we can do here is we can say, hey, I want to actually return, instead of message, something called all bills. Save this. Then down here in our component, we're using this function called use route data. So use route data, what this does is it pulls in whatever it is that you've returned from your loader function is what you'll get back in use route data. So what we can do is we can say let all bills equal use route data. Now that's going to cause our app to break, as you can see here. And the reason is there is no longer such a thing as data.message, which is what we're using down here. So let's just kind of wipe out what the default stuff that the Remix starter has here, and let's try and render these bills instead. So maybe we'll start with a div with class name of bill list. I don't know, seems like a fair name for it. And then inside here, we're gonna have, for each bill, we want to render something. So we'll start by doing this kind of like the quick and hacky way, and then maybe we'll refactor this out into components and stuff a little bit later. So let's start here and we'll say, all right, we want to do all bills.map. And so for each bill, we want to return a div that has, I don't know, bill.name. Yeah, I think the name is probably fine for now. Now this is TypeScript complaining that we don't know the type of bill, but we can fix that by saying, hey, this is a bill. And now that bill type is actually generated from our Prisma schema. So when Prisma knows about your database and it knows about the object model in your schema, and so it's actually generating this TypeScript definition for us. Okay, so here we've got, we've now said, hey, we want to use this route data and we're going to get all bills. And then we're going to loop over those bills and we're going to render a div with bill.name in it. And you can see here, I have two bills in the database, one that says SRP, which is my energy company, and one that says mortgage. And those are both rendering. So success? Question mark? This is pretty nice. So yeah, that's all it took to get there. Now, what's interesting is, again, this Prisma code is actually running on our server. And then it's passing the data to the client using this use route data, which is pretty cool. All right. Well, we're going to definitely want to show more things about these bills. And we also want to have a page to create a bill. So maybe let's get create a bill working first, and then we can start adding more properties to it. All right. So how are we going to create a bill? We have two options, right? We can put the create bill on this existing page, or we can have our own page that says that's called create bill or something like that. I think for now, maybe we'll just add it on this existing page, and then maybe in the future we change that to be a different route, because that route won't have to load any information, and maybe it can be a little bit cleaner, especially once you get to like a large list of bills. Luckily, I don't have a large list of bills, but if we did, actually maybe that's an excuse for maybe it should be a separate page. Okay, let's do that. So what we want to do is at the root now we have / which is mapping to this index.tsx. Let's also add another page called create. And this one is going to be, we're going to start with something very similar here to what we have in index, and then we'll just kind of pare it down. So it's going to have the same sort of stuff. I don't think we need a loader function here because we're not going to bring in any any data, right? This is a create, so we probably don't need it. Now, if we were going to pre-populate some of the fields or do some things like that, then maybe we would want to change it, but I don't think so. We'll probably have a style sheet for this page, so we'll leave this in here, but we'll change the style sheet later. And for title, we'll say bill creation. And the description is, oh no, you have a new bill. Make it here. So this meta function allows us to, again, at the end of the day, right, this is all getting rendered as HTML. There's some JavaScript stuff that's going on. There's some server-side rendering stuff that's going on. And what we're doing is, like, we're messing with one specific component that renders a page, right? But there's this, there's the stuff, like the meta content, the title, the description, and also pulling in any style sheets that all happens at the top of the page, which we're not really in control of. These meta and link functions give us the opportunity to do that. So these will get rendered or into the HTML in the way the browser normally understands them. There's no fancy tricks going on here. And that's what these hooks give us the option to do. All right, now an action function is what happens when this page posts, and definitely on create, we're gonna want to do something on post, so we're gonna leave this in here. And then down below, let's see, what do we want to do here? So we definitely want a form, right? Method equal post. And then right now we've only got one field, right, which is name. So we can just do an inputs type equal text, name equal name. Sounds good. We'll probably want a label for that, right? We'll call this bill name. And we'll want an ID of this as well. HTML4 equals name. Okay. Now let's see if we can, so we've just got a form rendering now. Let's see if we can actually get this to show up. So if we go to /create here, uh-oh, blew up. Why did it blow up? The reason is, right now we have this use route data with all bills, but we don't actually have a loader function in this component. So let's delete that out and see how we do. Okay, there we go. So here we can see we've got a form with a bill name and a large input box here. Now, the styling's not great here, right? But that's fine. We can fix the styling later, but at least we've got it rendering. And you can see in the URL here that this is at /create. So if we hop back to the editor, you can see by default what Remix is doing is in this routes folder, create maps to /create, and index maps to /. So index is a special keyword that's used to mean, you know, /, but everything, any other file we create in here is going to map to a route in our URL. 1 second, chat. My dog was in here investigating the carpet like she was about to start biting on it or something, and that was a little freaky. Okay. So the last thing we need for this form to work is let's add in a button. And we'll say create bill. There we go. Now we've got these three things here, create bill. But the styling is pretty garbage at the moment, so I'd like to get rid of that. That's definitely going to happen. But also, I'm not a huge fan of this page is rendered, and we'll figure that out as well. But if we want to start styling this, let's talk about how to style things in Remix. So with Remix, what you're doing is you're just using CSS to style this stuff. And then you use links function in order to bring this in. So all we need to do is let's go to styles here and create a new style sheet, and we'll call this create.css. And we'll put the styles for create in here. And then let's get this hooked up so that it loads. So go back to create. Now here, this we copied and pasted this from the index. So it's pulling in styles/index. Let's pull in create instead. And then in our links function, we're passing in rel equals style sheet, and href is the styles URL. So this is all we need to do in order to get the CSS to be loaded as part of this. So if we go over here to create CSS, we'll switch over to split screen. I don't know. Let's say that we want divs to have a background color of white. There we go. So now you can see that the CSS is definitely loading. Our background on the right-hand side there definitely changed to white. We can change it to orange, you know, make it nice and bright for us all to see. So you can see we have this, we definitely have this CSS getting piped in here. So now let's start maybe arranging our form in a slightly better way. So first of all, I would like it to be, I want to get rid of this inline style here. Let's cut this here. And for this one, we'll say class name equals, you know what? I don't even know that we need an enclosing div here. We probably just use the form for this. So class name equal build create, perhaps. And now let's get this stuff set up. So we'll say dot build create. Now this is kind of a page layout. So what are the things that we want to do? Well, we probably want to center it, and then I don't know, maybe we want it to render horizontally at the moment. So I'm just going to use flexbox for that. So we'll say display flex, and my flex direction is going to be column. Save that. Okay. I mean, we definitely laid it out vertically now, right? But still not fantastic. I think we want some padding on the sides or some margin on the sides, right? So let's say margin right, what, like 30%? Margin left, also maybe 30%. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. And then, I don't know, let's margin top 10%, something like that. Hey, there we go. Okay. So this is pretty nice now. Now we've got bill name and our little input here, and then a create bill button. I think that styling is maybe good enough for the moment. I suppose we could add like a little bit of space in between them. So we'll do dot build create. Use a little lobotomized owl here and say margin top, I don't know, what, like 1.3 EM, something like that. There we go. Gives us a little bit of space between our boxes there, at least enough to look different. I think ideally we probably want bill name and the input to be right next to each other, and then create bill to be a little farther down, but whatever. We'll deal with that later. All right, so now let's see if we can get this form to actually create a bill, right? This is the important part of this. So we're definitely going to be using action function here. What I don't know is how to create something using Prisma, so that's what we're going to have to look into. So let's pop over to our documentation view here. All right, so this is as far as I got in the Prisma docs to this point. We used Prisma migrate. Oh, that's not true. I guess I did install the Prisma client. Okay, so here's the query example that I ended up using, which was this await prisma.user.find many. So now let's go to the right database. So await prisma.model.create. Okay. And then we put data in there, and then data has the actual structure of our stuff. Okay. All right, let's give this a try here. Pop back over. So const new bill equals await prisma dot bill dot create, and then data. Now this says it has a problem because property name is missing, right? We need a name for the bill. But where does this name come from, right? We'll hard code it for the moment here. We need to figure out how to get this bill name. Now this is where we'll need to go to the Remix docs. So let's head over to Remix here. And defining route, styling, actions and database updates, okay. So what I don't remember is similar to the loader function, right? When we pulled in data in that loader function that's happening on the server, and then we use route data in order to get that information into our front end. Now we're trying to do the opposite, right? We've got some information in the form in our front end, and once it hits our back end, we want to pull some of that data out before we call into Prisma. And I honestly can't remember how to do that, so that's what we're going to look up here. Okay. So here we've got async. Okay, it takes in a request. Got it. Takes in a request. So then we should be able to get the information we want from the request. Looking at an example down here. Okay. So we take in the request. And then we do new URL search params, await request.text. This will give us the fields from our form. And then we can do body.get and then the name of the element in our form. Okay. This seems reasonable. So let's grab this for the moment here. All right. So we want this up here. And this is going to take in requests. Request.text does not exist. Is this not a function? Oh, this needs to be... There we go. Okay. That gives us our body. And then we could get our name by saying const name equal body.get name. But this .get style is not my favorite. And so I think what we're going to do is say object dot from entries. And this should allow us to do name equal body.name like this. And that will allow us to then pass in the name down here. And then once we create this, where do we want to go? I do think we want to redirect to index, right? So index has a list of our bills. And so once we create this, I think that's probably where we want to go. And for now, let's also do like console.log new bill. We'll say, this is my new bill, everyone. Fantastic. All right, so I think this might work. Let's find out. So what's our bill name? Our bill name is, what's another bill that I have? What about my HOA? Okay, create bill. See what happens. Hey, look at that. Got HOA there. Sweet. Well, that was easy. So all we did in this action function is we're getting in the fields from our form, and then we're calling prisma.bill.create over here, and then passing in the name of our data. And it looks like Prisma is handling making the right query to our database and all that jazz, which is pretty nice. Okay. Okay. All right, so let's now I think having just the name and the idea is not going to be good enough. Oh, let's look at our console just to see what we got, right? So if we view our terminal, oh, here we go. Let's see, can I make this bigger? Go. Okay. So here we can see, here's our log that happened. This is my new bill, everyone. ID 7, name is HOA. Fantastic. So that did work. Awesome. Okay, so we have create working. I guess now what we'd want to do is add more properties to our bills. So let's see if we can get use Prisma to do that. So in addition to the ID and the name, I also want to know the website, which is just going to be a string. And I want to know the amounts, which I'll just store as an int, because these are approximate amounts anyways. Things like my electricity bill and things like that, they're going to change from month to month, so they're not going to be static amounts anyhow. And let's see, what else do I want? I want to know if this thing is paid or not, which is going to be a boolean. And then it needs to have some due date, or like when do I have to pay this bill by? And this is going to be a date time. So we'll save this stuff here. So now we've changed our model for this, but how do we change our database, right? Like, it's like, are we gonna have to go in and start making changes? Technically Postgres backs this database, but it doesn't have to. So how are we gonna fix our database? How are we gonna update our database? What we can do is come over here. We're gonna use Prisma to do this for us. So in the console down here, I'm gonna say npx Prisma migrate dev. And now what I expect to happen is it's probably gonna tell us you can't do this. Yeah. So the reason is we didn't provide defaults for any of this stuff, right? But there's data in our database right now. And so it's saying, hey, I can't come up with an amount and a due date and a paid and a site for all these bills that you already have in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over to pgadmin, which you're not going to be able to see. And I'm just going to truncate the table. I'm going to get rid of all the information that we have here. And then let's see if now Prisma, so now I've wiped out all the data. Let's see if Prisma will let us migrate now. Enter a name for this migration. Site amount. Maybe I can just kind of use spaces. It looks like it's site amount paid due date. A good name for it. Okay. So it says complete. That's pretty fantastic. How do we tell though? Like what? How are we gonna tell if our app knows about this? We go over to create now. You can see that data has a problem, and if we mouse over this, it says, "Hey, we're missing some elements here. You can't assign something with name string into this because it's missing a bunch of data." And so here you can see that site, amount, paid, and due date, these things up here, are what it's telling us we still need. So as soon as we migrated with Prisma, it regenerated a new strongly typed client on our app side, which now knows that you can't do a create without a site, an amount, whether or not this thing is paid, and a due date. Now it occurs to me that we did one thing wrong, which is for this paid, we actually do have a default here. I want this to be default false. So when I add a new bill, the expectation is I have not already paid that bill. So let's run this migration again. Well, not this migration, but it's going to be a new migration. The name for this is default unpaid. Okay, great. And so now you'll see what Prisma is doing, right? Is it's finding out the difference between, it's doing the diff between our current model and our old model. It's turning that into migrations to run against our database and doing that all for us and only running the diff. And there's not much that I have to do for this. Noli says, "Hey Elisande, what are you coding?" I'm coding a little bill tracker. It's an app that I wrote for myself like 5 years ago, and the framework that I wrote it in, which is called Meteor, like made some update that makes my app no longer work, and so I'm rewriting it in some new technologies that I wanted to play around with, most notably Remix, which is a web development framework, and then Prisma, which is a JavaScript ORM, which is the thing that we're just touching right here. Okay, so if we pop back over to create now it should no longer complain that that paid is not passed in because we gave it a default, and that's true. So we need a website for it and an amount and a due date. Canoli says, what does it do? Yeah, it's super simple. So it just tells me the name of the bill, approximately how much the bill is, and when it's due, and whether or not I've paid it. And then if I tell it I paid this bill, then it schedules the bill for next month and says, hey, now, you know. So the ultimate goal is, let's say, let's look at the app here real fast. So like my HOA bill, for instance, right? So it'll have a little, it'll have an amount and a website next to it, and then a paid button. If I hit paid, it will then mark this bill as paid and create a new bill for next month and tell me, hey, next month on the 1st or whenever the bill is due, you need to pay this bill. So that's the idea. Okay, so let's fix this real quick. We need a site, an amount, and a due date. But to get those things, we're going to need to get them in from our form. So I'm going to comment this out for the moment so that the rest of our app doesn't break. We can still go to the create page. So let's go to our create over here. Split this up. Okay, so here's our little create page. So we need more information now than we did before. We only needed a name before, but we need more now. So let's is it form group? I can never remember what the name of the label group. There's a name for this. I can never remember what it is. So we'll just use div for the moment. Let's group the bill name with its label here. Okay. Hinoli says that's a good concept, and it's linked to the service, so it tells you the amount you have to pay. No, it's not linked to the service. It's just a static amount that I put in. It's just a way for me to remember like what I need to pay and when. It's not really the case anymore, but I grew up very poor, and so I have this kind of built-in reflex that I developed over many years of I hate anything that has an auto pay feature. I am not comfortable with people automatically taking money out of my account that I have no control over, and so I manually go through and pay my bills every month, and this is just something to help me out with that. All right, so we've got our name, but we need a couple more input elements here. Let's say label. So we already have the name, we need the amounts. So that feels like a good next place to go. Inputs, type equal number. All right. So now we've got bill name and amount over here. And then finally we need the site was the other thing that it was complaining about. So div label websites. Not label. Noli says, I get you. I'm like that. Yeah, it's something that I should be more comfortable with now, because it's been many years since I've had to worry about scheduling my bills so that there would be enough money in my account. But it's something I've just been unable to break, I guess. Okay. So now we've got bill name, we've got amount, we've got website. These are all the pieces of information we need. They're fairly ugly, but we can handle styling here in a minute. Let's see if we can actually get the functionality to work. And then we'll worry about maybe making this a little bit prettier. All right. So in order to get the information into when we're going to Prisma, what we're going to need is these have to have names, because up here, when we say body.name, this property matches to the HTML name right here. So ironically enough, we named the name field name, which is nice and confusing for everyone. But the name of the amount is going to be amount. And the name of the website is going to be site. Those are the things that we called them. We also need IDs on these things for the labels. If you're not familiar with web, there's some reasons for that, but it's not super important. It's just a thing you gotta do. Okay, so now that these things have names, we should be able to get them to pipe into our Prisma in our action function up here. So just like we got name here, let's go const amount equal body.amount and site equal body.site. Okay. Now we'll uncomment out our code here, and remember it was complaining specifically about site amount and due date, which we forgot. All right, so we need due date as well. Let's add this in here. Div label here is due date. Input type equal date. Now I'm building this just for me, so this isn't really going to matter, but input type equal date has problems on the web, thanks to Apple in particular. But I don't care about Safari because I don't use it, and so I'm going to use input type equal date and just pretend like it's not a problem. And we'll call the name due dates, and the ID can be due date as well. This is for due dates. Save this. All right, so now if we look at our split screen, Safari, yeah, so here's the level of ridiculousness that this is. Safari, if you're using a MacBook, right? Safari does not support input type equal date. But mobile Safari on an iPhone does support input type equal date. Blah. Thanks, Apple. All right, so now we have this little date picker here that we can use to choose a date. Fantastic. And pretty ugly, but the default is good enough for now, I think. Okay. So now let's also pass in this information. So we've got the site, and now we need a due date. Okay, fantastic. And we'll just pass those in down here. So site, amount, due date. All right, now we've got a problem here. String is not assignable to number. So when we get the request from our HTML form, all the properties come through as text. There's no way to tell whether it's a number or a string, and so we actually have to do that part ourselves. So here we'll say number body.amount. We'll see if this makes it happy. It does seem to make it happy. Okay. So now none of this stuff is complaining, right? Let's keep our console.log in here so that we can see what happens with our new bill. This is my new bill. If everything goes fine, this console log isn't going to be necessary at all because we'll just see the results on the website. But if indeed things go wrong, then it might be useful for figuring out what happened. All right. So bill name, we deleted all the other data in here. So let's say this is SRP and I don't know, $200. A website, I think it's just srp.com or something. And then due date, I think I paid this one on the 1st of the month. So let's go July 1st here. And then hit create bill and see what happens. What the hell is that? I think what the problem is here, if I remember correctly, is what I forgot to do after we migrated or regenerated our client in Prisma is I think I need to restart the web app. So let's try that. We'll refresh the app here. No, I just want to go to this page. Just go here. Okay. Let's see if this is less broken than what we originally maybe thought. 200 srp.com July 1st. Oh, is it gonna explode again, chat? Oh, it sure is. Well, you know, that's problematic. So now the question is, where are we breaking at here? Cannot clone body after it is used. That's a weird error. So loading our create page is fine. Loading our index page is fine. So that means something is wrong here. Something is wrong here. We're gonna have to figure out what that is. So weirdly, right, like this was working before. And so I suspect that it's one of these inputs, which is the problem. So maybe let's try hard coding these inputs for now and then see if it functions, and then we can go kind of walk backwards from there. Let's get rid of all this stuff. And we're just gonna hard code this. So name's SRP. The site is srp.com. The amount is 200 and the due date is today. Right. So in this case, now we don't even actually have to fill out this form because all the data is just hard coded anyway. So we're just gonna hit create. Okay, so that worked. So there's definitely a problem with how we're getting our data from the form to the app. Okay. So then let's take this approach. What we're gonna do is we're actually gonna comment out the code that makes the new bill along with the console log. So that's gonna break. And then let's, we already know that name works. Like we've used this before, right? So now let's uncomment out amounts and see if it blows up when we press the button. No, that seems fine. Okay. So then what about site? Go back here and hit create bill. Okay, that still seems fine. Then what about due date? I'm guessing that this due date must be the thing that's broken, huh? Also still fine. Interesting, these things. All right, let's log this stuff and see what values we're actually getting in here. I think name and site are probably fine, but we'll log them anyways. We'll say name, it's name, amount is amount, or not constant. Now that I'm thinking about it, my guess is that it's due date that's messing stuff up. Because what I'm guessing is happening is whatever we're getting here as a date, I'm guessing that Prisma can't understand as an actual date time. But let's find out. Let's see what we're getting and see where this ends up. So these console.logs are gonna show up in our terminal down here. I'm gonna go over the site and press the button. Well, we gotta fill this stuff out first, right? So this is SRP, this is 200, this is srp.com. This is, I don't know, just today. It doesn't even matter, right? Hit create bill. Okay, so name SRP, amount 200, sites srp.com, due date 2021-6/18. So this is ISO format date. So this should be fine. I'm not sure what's breaking here. maybe it's because let's try this. So this is going to be a string. Let's see if we can convert that to a date. Okay. And we're going to go back to our create page now. Like create bill again. Okay, that's still fine. Still seems to be good. So it didn't break anything at least. Now let's uncomment our creation code here. And see if this actually... Let's put this stuff in. So name, sites, amount, and due dates. All right. Any better luck this time? RP 200. Due date July 1st. Aha. Success. So that's what it was, is we were taking in body.dueDate here, which is just text. And so what happened was when we tried to pass that to Prisma, Prisma was like, hey, the due date is actually a date time object. It's not a string, but you gave me a string, and so I don't know what to do with this. And it blew up. Now the message it gave us was pretty terrible. I was hoping for maybe a better error message than that, but it's all right. I'm actually surprised that it didn't complain when we tried to pass in a string for due date here, because, well, yeah, the type here is string. That's interesting. Huh. It's interesting because amount is a number, right? And then it properly types these other properties, but for due date it does not. But we definitely declare it as a date time here, right? So it knows that it's supposed to be a date, but then it does a string. I understand why, because dates and times are very weird concepts to have to deal with, but not optimal. And the error message definitely could have been better, right? So we can clean up these console logs that we had in here, along with the one for our new bill, because this is now working. We can see that it's got 2 SRP bills up here, which is pretty fantastic. All right, so now we're creating with a bunch more information. Let's show that information, right? We're gonna hop back over to index here. Index doesn't have an action function, at least right now, but we'll leave it for the moment. Here's the code that we have for that, that's showing our bill. But I'm gonna here make a function called bill. And this is going to take in a bill, which is of type bill. It only says, you know, I only have a bit of HTML knowledge, but you sure explain it in a way that I can understand. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And for what it's worth, this framework that I'm using, which is called Remix, is really based on, like, it uses as much of the web standards as it can. And so it's, I think, easier to understand for people who have just an HTML knowledge, because ultimately it's just HTML that it's outputting most of the time. Actually, even though, you know, we're writing it in kind of a strange way, what is actually rendering on the page over here has no JavaScript in it at all. This is just HTML. If we hit inspect here, this is some web. This is from the. This is because we're. This is the dev server, the live reload stuff, but the actual content here is. It's just HTML. There's no JavaScript that's actually getting rendered here at all. So yeah, Remix does it is pretty close to standard HTML stuff, which is pretty neat. Okay, so we want to render this bill now. So return. Let's start with what we've got right now, which is just return the name. Okay. Bill dot name. What is your problem? Oh, right, because we have to say so this needs to be props. Just say any for the moment. Const bill of type bill. Well, props.bill. Okay. There we go. And so what we're going to do down here is instead of having this function here, we're just going to say, we're just going to call bill, the bill function. Okay. What that's going to let us do is now we have this separate function that we can write, how we want bill to show up in, and not have to worry about changing the outside one. So what do we want our bill to look like? Well, great question. I don't know the entire answer, but I do know that we still want to have a name. And then, let's see, we also want the amount, right? And now we're going to want to start labeling some of this stuff, right? So we'll have amount, and then we'll have the website, which is bill.site. And then we want, what's the other thing? Due dates. All right, let's see what happens if we just save that. Nothing happens, but it should have gotten re-rendered. So probably, yes, our dev server has stopped running. Let's try running it again. Refresh our page. App error cannot read property name of undefined. Aha. Because we need to do here is say bill equal bill. Can any this up? End this here. There we go. Should fix it. Of course, we might have broken our server again, which of course we did. So you shouldn't have to keep restarting the dev server like this. It's a known problem in Remix, and they're working on it. It should fail silently, right? Where we should get a nice error message on our UI, but the actual dev server shouldn't break, and then we should just be able to make a change and it will fix itself, but we're not quite there yet. All right, so we've got some more information now. And we can see over here, we've got the name, which is SRP, an amount, which is 200, the site, which is srp.com. I hope that's the site. I'm sure at some point during this, I'm going to click on this link, and I hope it's actually their website and not like porn or something. And then we have a due date here as well. This due date is not in a very consumable format, so we're gonna have to fix that when we're showing it, but that's okay. We can get to that as well. Noli says bill is a bill is a bill because it's a bill. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. All right, so what do we want to do with this? Well, let's maybe try and make this a little prettier. So I'm going to do a couple of things. The first one I'm going to do is go to our terminal here, and I'm going to bring in a library called Moment. Yes. Actually, hold on a moment. There's another date. So Moment is a framework that helps you handle dates. There's another one that I've been hearing about. I want to see if it has the functionalities that we need here. Date FNs. Okay, yeah, this looks like it has what I need. So I want it to be able to format and to be a nice like I want it to be this bill to be able to say, hey, like this is due 3 days from now, or it's due 2 days ago, or whatever. You're good with srp.com. It's like a Pistons page for cars. That's not the right website then, but it's at least if I click on it, it won't be a horrible stream disaster, right? Thanks for double checking that for me, and I'll figure out what the right website is here in a moment. Okay, so I want to try and use this date FNs then. Like Moment is this nice way to deal with times and dates. But the problem with Moment is they made a bunch of bad design decisions. Bad. Maybe they were right for the time, but the decisions that they made actually make it a very large thing, and it's relatively slow. And there are a lot of foot guns where, like, when you say, hey, I want to, I have this date and I want to add 2 days to it, it doesn't return you a new date. It actually modifies that date. And so you have to do all these weird hoops to jump around a lot of times when you're dealing with times and dates. This datefns is supposed to fix that and not have those kinds of problems. And so that's what I'm going to try. I'm going to try this datefns. I haven't used it before, so we're going to leave the documentation page open over here. But let's see how intuitive it is as we jump across. All right, so npm install datefns, I think it was called. So npm is a package manager for JavaScript. So what this is doing is it's going off to the JavaScript registry at npm.org, and it's grabbing this library and pulling it in. Of course, now because this is not completing quickly, I'm worried that I did not do the right install command. The installation. It says npm install date-fns, which is what we did. Let's try again. Maybe it just got stuck somewhere. Ah, there we go. Okay, great. Okay, so now in particular, I wanted this format function that we saw on the docs. So I'm literally just going to comment from the docs here, or copy from the docs. We're going to say we want to import formats from datefns. Oh man. Computer. Why are you being so slow here? Something's going on with my editor. Uh-oh. Not supposed to be running this slow. All right. Seems to be the code formatter that is running super slow at the moment. Not sure why, but that's fine. Okay, now we want to use this formats on our due date here. There we go. Formats. Save settings maybe. We're going to turn back on format on save because format on save is the best option ever created in development, and hopefully the add-on doesn't break again. All right, so let's try and format this due date using this format. So it takes in a date. Cool. Okay. So it needs a date, a format string, and then options. So if I look over at the docs here, what they pass in is... Oh, I actually don't want format. I want format distance. All right, let's just paste this into the code as a comment, and then we can work from there. So we'll just comment this out here. I don't want format, I want format distance, but my editor will actually do this for me, or it should. Okay. And then it says sub days. Okay, so then we pass in our bill to this, and then new date is today, and then add suffix true. Okay. Auto import this. Oh, no. This doesn't need to be sub days. Okay. Just be this. Okay. There we go. All right. So now if we look at our split screen here, API error, invalid time value. Uh-oh. All right. Well, let's look at the documentation for this then, huh? So I would like to find duration. Format distance. Okay, here we go. Return the distance between the given dates in words. Yes, this is what I want. What's the actual typed signatures here? Okay. So you pass in the date, the base date, and then any options. Okay. I thought that's what we were doing, but maybe not. So this is the date that we have, which is the due date. We've got new dates. Oh, you know what? Due date is probably not. No, it is a date. Interesting. Invalid time value, huh? Okay, what if, hold on, let's just use new date here as well for the moment. So like, it'll be the exact same time. Okay, this works. So it says less than a minute ago. So there's something weird about what we're getting in our due date. So maybe let's try this. Oh, bill.due date, sorry. Aha. Success. Here we go. Now due date 21 minutes ago, and the other one due date in 12 days. Yeah, that due date part of it is a little weird. Look at this. I don't really like this. So we're just going to say due. There we go. Okay. Yeah, that's looking decent. I mean, decent is a relative term at this point, right? All right, let's give these things some names. Class name equal bill. Okay. This will be bill name. Bill amounts. Websites. One class name equal due in due dates. Due. I don't know. Due is fine, I think. Okay, so now let's go about maybe like trying to organize this wall of text here into something that looks like, you know, concrete objects that we can kind of look at and understand. So to do that, we need the magic that is CSS. So let's open up our index.css. All right, and I'm actually going to split this. Let's do split right. So that we can look at what our names are here and then our CSS. So let's switch to the editor here for the moment. I'm just going to define my classes here first, and then we'll unsplit and do some live reloading stuff. That'll be fun to watch as our website changes before our very eyes. And then do. And then also we have bill list, which we'll probably want to style as well. Okay. So open up index.css over here again. Great. And now let's look at our lovely little website on the other side here. Okay, so the first thing that we probably want to do is give some spacing to our stuff. So we'll say bill list star plus star margin top, I don't know, 1.5 EM, something like that. Okay, there we go. Now we got a little bit of space between our two bills at least. The bills still look ugly, but you know, fine. All right, so now we come to the bill itself. And now what we want to think about is how do we want to lay this out? So, you know, kind of what I'm thinking here is maybe we have the name of the bill and the amount, like on the top line. Then we have the site below that, and then maybe the due date at the bottom. I mean, alternatively, we could also turn the name into a link, right? And have the site be the backing for the link and the amount, and then just have the due date, which would keep this stuff relatively contained. But there is one more part to this that I do want to add, which is whether or not this bill is paid. So let's go over to index here and add that just so that we can be thinking about this when we're thinking about our layout. So here we want button and then pay. Okay, so there we go. So now we have a button as well. That'll help us think about how we want to do this. Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe we turn the name into a link to the website, and that's what we use the site for. So we don't actually display the site. We can put the amount on the same line, like SRP-200 or something like that. And then have the due date and then pay. Yeah, I mean, that feels okay. I think it's a good place to start, and then maybe we can think if we can find any other way to make it even prettier. So let's do those things. So first of all, let's remove the site here. We don't need you. We don't need you. And instead, for bill name here, we're gonna wrap it with an anchor tag. And the text of that is going to be the bill's name, so we'll put that here. But then the href is going to be bill.site. Okay, there we go. So now this is a link. And then I also want the amount, I think, to be on the same line. So maybe for the moment we'll just change this to a $sign. And then we've got the due, and then we've got the pay. Okay. So I think from a code perspective, we got this the way that we want, or a content perspective, and now it's just a matter of arranging and seeing how we want this to play out. And we'll do all this in CSS. So what are we gonna do here? I imagine this thing as being kind of like a box. So let's use a grid. Oh, not bill list. We want bill. So here I'm going to say display grid. Now what that does is it says, hey, I'm about to lay out these elements into a grid, and I'm going to tell you how many columns they have and how many rows they have, and how your object should be arranged inside of that grid. And so then what I'm going to say is, we missed bill name here, huh? So we don't need website anymore, so this is bill name. Wow. Use some bill name, bill amount, bill due. Helps if I actually like keep a consistent naming scheme, right? All right, and so how do we want this grid to work? I think we want there to be 2 columns, right? Because we want SRP and the dollar amount, which is 200, to be on kind of the same line. So I'm gonna say grid template columns, and I'm gonna add 2 columns here. Okay. So we definitely have 2 columns. It's maybe not exactly what we were expecting. So now we've got SRP and due date on the left-hand side and $200 in pay on the right-hand side. Huh. Maybe I don't hate this. What if we combine the amount with the pay button? So we basically have SRP due 28 minutes ago on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, we have pay $200, for instance. Interesting. Interesting. I don't know entirely how I feel about that, but I'm willing to try it. I mean, if I was actually clicking the button in order to pay it, like, it would feel better, but maybe the design isn't terrible here. Let's try combining these. So this is going to get a name, by the way, and we'll call this bill pay, because why not, right? But we're going to get rid of amount here, and instead we're going to take this. We're going to move it down, put it on the button. Okay, so now the button does say pay 200. The format here, the order has kind of gone in a direction we didn't expect, but that's okay. We can fix that. All right, so here we've got the name, we've got bill due, and then we've got bill pay. So let's check out our CSS here. We've told it that we want 2 columns, but we didn't tell it like how we want this stuff laid out yet. And so the default is it's going to go in the order that these things are defined in the HTML and kind of fill in the columns, right? So it's taking the name first, and then it's taking the due date, and then it's taking the pay. But we don't have to leave it that way. So this one is bill due, by the way. And the other one that we need is .bill pay. So we can also use CSS to style this stuff. So in this case, like, what I really want is bill pay to be in that first row, second column. So let's do grid column 2, grid row 1. Okay. And then just for like completeness, let's do the same thing on bill due of telling where we want it to be. So I want you to be in column 1, and I want you to be in row 2. Okay, which shouldn't change anything, and it didn't, but that's the way it wanted. But then, you know, maybe this pay button on the right-hand side, maybe this is like even more important. So maybe what we'll say is grid row start span 2. That's not the right syntax, is it? So what I want to try and get this to do is span 2 rows. I can never remember the syntax for how to do this, though. There it is. Okay. I don't know. Maybe that's too big. Maybe that's too big. I kind of like the SRP due in 12 days thing on the left-hand side. Not sure what we want to do with this button. I mean, maybe it's correct for it to span both rows, but maybe it shouldn't be the entire size. So let's maybe say, you know what? We're gonna add some margin to you, and I don't know, 3 EM, something like that. No, that is not what we wanted. Let's say height is 50% of its parent, and width is 50% of its parent. What about that? It's okay, but it's not centering it, which isn't fantastic, but we can also say justify self center. I think we'll fix that. Nope, I wanted align self. There we go. Okay. So now our pay button's like a reasonable size, I would say. And it's in the middle of the line that SRP and the due date span, which sounds okay. Yeah. This isn't terrible, I don't think. All right, but what is kind of terrible is this the button styling. Let's split this back up. So our button actually has this bill pay on it, so we can just start styling here. So let's give this like a border radius, which is going to round the corners. We'll do like 7 pixels or something like that. Okay. Fantastic. Let's do... This doesn't need to be this large. 30%, something like that. Okay. That's better. Let's give it a little more padding around the top and bottom. Just to... The padding top, like, I don't know, half an EM. Same with padding bottom. Something like that. That is not what I expected to happen when I told it to do that, for sure. Okay. Quite strange. All right. Let's remove that. Back to the top. Probably has to do with the height, right? Let's say this is max height instead. Padding top. Let's just do pixels for the moment. Yeah, it moves it down, but it doesn't expand it at all. Interesting. Okay. I also don't want there to be any border here, so I'm going to say border width none. Or 0, I guess we can go. Okay. That's not too bad. An okay looking button. Yeah, I don't think it needs much more than that, to be honest. It's looking pretty good. All right. So then what do we do next? We want to make these pay buttons work, right? I think that's a big thing. So let's maybe do that. Feels good to me. Something else we could do, right, if we wanted to, is we could do something like border radius 7px, something similar, and then border color, maybe like CCC, something like that. Oh, we need a width on it. Border width, 1px. Solid, yeah, 1px. Let's just do this. Border, 1 pixel, solid, gray. How about that? There we go. We could do something like this as well, just to have like some separation between it, or we could do more like, make it more look more like rows in a table if we wanted to. I mean, I don't think I hate that. If I was gonna have a ton of bills, maybe I would lay it out more like rows in a table, because I think spreadsheets are how people maybe more naturally absorb this kind of information, but I'm only gonna have like 8 bills or something like that, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. One moment, chat. Okay, I'm good. All right. Yeah, so I think this is good. I think what's left is to make the bills, make it so that when we click pay, it marks the bill as paid, and then also creates a new bill next month for that. Oh, you know what? That's a good point. You know what we don't have so far is a frequency for our bills. Let's fix that real fast. So we kind of forgot that in our create here. So in addition to these, We also want label frequency and inputs type equal select. Or no, it's just it's select. I think this is what we want. So let's do a drop down for frequency. Monthly, yearly maybe? I don't know. Oh yeah, we probably want to change the label on that. So now we have like monthly or yearly over here. Oh, you can't see the drop down. That's an interesting, weird web capture bug here. So this is a drop down that lets you select monthly or yearly. Strangely, Twitch doesn't capture the expanded part of the drop down, which is quite odd, but you know, it is what it is. Because we need to know when we go to create the new bill, right? Like, how far in the future should we create this? And the answer is, I don't know. But yeah, okay, this will be important. All right, so let's pipe that through. So what do we need? Up here, I'm gonna say const frequency equal body.frequency. But in order to get that, we need to have names on this stuff. Frequency ID equal frequency, and label HTML4 frequency. There we go. Okay, so now we're getting it in here, but now we need to pass it into our bill object, right? And in order to do that, we need to change our schema. Let's add one more field here. We'll call this frequency. And this is going to be a string. And I'm going to have the default just be monthly. Because honestly, that's what most of my bills are anyway, so I think I'll just create that. All right, and now we need to update our database with these same settings, and we're going to do the same thing that we did last time, which is we're going to run Prisma, migrate dev. Now, this migration should be okay, and the reason is we provided a default for this. So even though we have rows already, since we're providing a default, it's going to be able to just fill those in. Add frequency. That's a good name for this migration. All right, generated a new client. We're going to restart our dev server here just to make sure that no weirdness happened when we regenerated our client like it did last time. I don't know what you are, but... Oh, yeah, you're fine. Okay. All right, so now hopefully on our crate page, we can pass in frequency. And this will work. Let's hope. Let's add a new bill. We'll call this HOA maybe. The amount is, I think we pay $80 or something like that. Website, I don't know what the website is. I'll fill this in later, so we'll just do Google for the moment. Due date is, let's say, the 1st. Frequency is monthly. Okay, great. Create bill. It works. Look at that. HOA, due in 12 days, pay $80. Heck yes. Frequency, currently a success. At least we hope so. All right. Now we actually need to use that frequency to do something, and how are we going to do that? Great question. Yeah, I get it. It's complaining because I have an empty rule there. All right. So let's pop over to index here, because this is where we're actually going to have the button, right? And we need to have the button do something. How do we make the button do something? The answer with Remix is the same way we had the other button do something, which is we're going to put it in a form. The method is going to be post for now. We might change that, but for now we'll call it post. We're going to put this button in this form here. Go. And this will be a type submit now, because it's submitting a form. technically we don't need that because HTML something something, it'll automatically assume this button is for submitting the form, but we're going to do it anyways. Now it's messed up our CSS a little bit though. So we're going to have to fix that, but okay, we'll get to you in a moment, CSS. We'll get to you in a moment. I wonder if we say class name equal bill pay. Will this fix it? No. Okay. We'll fix the CSS here in a moment. Okay. So we're gonna have a form that we're gonna have to submit, but remember in our create, right? What happens is when we click the submit button, we get a request into our action loader, and then our action function, this thing. And then we have to get the information out of that request. And that information comes from the form. But we don't actually take in any information here. So how are we going to get like the bill name, for instance, right? And how are we going to get the due date if we need to calculate a new date and things like that? Well, the answer is we need to pass those things in this form, and we can do it by using a kind of input called a hidden input. So type equal hidden. So what this means is we can pass information using these type hiddens that won't render anything on the page, but actually do pass information when we submit the form. So the name here will say, we'll actually call this, we'll say ID. How about that? And then the value is bill.id. Okay. Same here, input type equal hidden. Name equal, we'll need the due date for this, so we'll say due date, and the value here is bill.duedate. Okay. So we'll two string that date and pass that along. And I think these are the only two things that we're going to need. No, we need the frequency as well. That's right. We just added frequency specifically for this interaction. So type equal hidden, name equal frequency, value equal bill.frequency. And you can see here that it's auto-completing bill for bill because we're generating that schema with Prisma, which is pretty cool. All right, so I think this is all the information that we're going to need in order to accomplish the action that we're hoping to accomplish. And now let's see if we can figure it out. All right. So inside of our action function, we know here that we're going to get in a request. I'm actually just going to go copy the base of this from create because it's going to be the same thing. All right, so we've got a body, and then we want some parameters from that body. ID, which is going to be a number, and this is going to be body.id. Got a due date, which is going to be a date from body.duedate. And we need a frequency, which is actually just body.frequency because it's type of string anyway, so we're good. All right, so now we need to use this information in order to mark the bill as paid and create a new bill for next month. So how do we do that? Well, first we have to mark the bill as paid. The unfortunate part is I don't know how to do that. So what we're gonna do is hop over to the Prisma docs here and see if they have an example of update. So here's the create. Okay. Oh, here we go. Looks like it just has an update function. And then you say where, and then you give it the data. Okay. Okay. This is pretty small on your screens, huh? Yeah, so it looks like there's an update method on Prisma, and then we'll provide a where clause, and then we'll tell it what we want to change. Okay. Let's give this a shot. Back over to the editor here. So what we want to say is await Prisma dot bill dot update where ID is ID. So we can say actually where ID. And then the data that I would like to change is I want to update paid to true. Okay. And, you know, maybe for the moment, we want to display whether or not this bill is paid here. So maybe down here for our button, we'll say, okay, if bill.paid. So if the bill is paid, what we're going to do is we're going to show a button that's disabled that says paid. Okay. And then if not bill.paid, then we're going to render this whole form bit down here. And this will still be a class name of bill pay. Okay. So now what should happen hypothetically when we click this paid button, I've got to fix the CSS before it drives me crazy. So we're gonna do this first. So what do we want to call this? Name equal bill pay form, and then we'll change this one to bill pay button. Right. So then change this to bill pay button, and we're just gonna leave in the border width and radius here, I think. And then bill pay form, I think it's this information. Not quite right. I want it to be more centered than this. Ah. Flex direction column, and then align items center. Oop. Oop. Justify items, not self items center. Still not working. Interesting. Okay. Don't know what I'm doing that's not working here, but I think this is good enough at least. It's good enough for the moment that it's not driving me insane, so I think we'll be fine. All right. So now what we're saying is if we go to create here, not create index, we scroll up to our action function here. We're saying, okay, when somebody submits to this form, what we're going to do is we're going to find the bill with that ID, and we're going to mark it as paid, and then we're going to redirect to this page, which will then trigger the loading function, which should then put those bills back on our page. Now we updated the way that our bill displays, so that if this bill is paid, what we should see is instead of the pay $80 button that we see right now, we should see a disabled button that just says paid. That's what we hope. So let's try and click one of these pays and see what happens. That did work. It changed the ordering, as you can clearly see here. SRP went to the bottom, but it now is paid, which is what we wanted. So that's pretty cool. The styling is a little bit different, and the reason here is because One of these has a wrapper and the other one doesn't. So what we're going to do is say class name equal bill pay form. We're just going to wrap this in a div so that the styling is consistent. Yeah, there we go. So now you can see this is paid. Now, weirdly, this button is centered, even though these buttons are not, which... Okay. But it did work, right? We are able to mark these bills as paid now. Fantastic. So that's half of what we want. But what it's not doing is creating new bills for the future yet. So not great. But that's okay. We can fix that. Step one is let's create a new unpaid bill. And we'll stick with the SRP stuff because it seems fine. Right. And now we're creating August's bill, maybe? Let's create this bill. Okay, so yeah, now we have this pay $200. Sweet. We are good again. All right, so what do we want to do in addition to this? So this updates our current bill, but we also want to create a new one. All right, well, let's go grab our crate from the other side here, right? This is our code from the crate page that actually creates a bill. Just paste it in here. All right. I need all this information about this bill. But what if we don't pass in so much information? Here's a thought. What if all we pass in is just the ID? Follow me here for a moment. What we'll do is we'll get rid of these. Instead, what we'll do is we'll say old bill equal to Prisma dot bill dot find unique ID. Is it just find first? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the documentation here. Right. So where is write to the database? Find many. Okay, but I don't want to find many. I want to find exactly one. So what's the... Here they use find many include... Oh, okay, interesting. So maybe that's what we want to do. Maybe we want to do this syntax of we want to do find unique and then use this include structure. Take a look. I guess we don't need the web for this at the moment. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's find first, include ID. Is that what we want? Include does not exist. Dot find unique. This takes in a select argument. Oh, I see. So I think what we're doing wrong here is that it does this and then include and then ID, maybe? Still not happy with this. Okay. Back to the docs. All right. Just get me back to the main docs page here. All right. Reference. Great. I want to know the client reference. Find unique. Tell me how to use this. Find unique lets you query a single database record by ID or by unique attribute. Okay. So it needs a where clause. That's what it needs. Okay, okay. Let's see. So let's say where. Aha. Okay. So this should return us the old bill, and now when we're creating the new bill, we can use this information, right? Old bill.name. We need to tell it that this isn't this. We need to tell TypeScript that this is not going to be null. As bill. Goodness. All right. So then the site is going to be oldbill.site. And amount is going to be oldbill.amount. And now the due date and the frequency, these are the things that need to be a little bit different here. So let's say const, well, the frequency is going to be the same. We can use this one. So oldbill.frequency. It's unlikely that's going to change, but this due date is another story. We do want this to change. It's the whole point, in fact. So up here we'll say due date equal or original due date maybe. Old bill dot due date. Okay. And now what do we want to say here? So we basically want to add a month to this, right? So I suspect that datafns is going to have something for this. Maybe add days. No, add months. Yes. Great, an add months function. Fantastic. Exactly what I want. So here we'll have to say new due date. Now we're gonna have to do some switching here, right? Because we have two potential frequencies that we have, right? So we have add months. Let's also add years. So we'll say if I guess we want this frequency to be defined earlier as well. Just have this be frequency instead. So if frequency is equal to monthly, well, let's do the yearly case. So if this is equal to yearly, then new due date is equal to let's see, original due dates. Well, I know, add years. Dates. Oh, we need to make this a date, don't we? We ran into this earlier, where this thing wasn't actually a date, and so we ran into problems. So we'll say original due date 1. Otherwise, the only other option right now is monthly. So we'll say it will be the add months original due date 1. Then our due date here will be new due date. Okay. Now we're saying, okay, we've got this new, we took the old bill, we marked it as paid, and now we want to look at that old bill and say, hey, actually, does this return the bill? Wonder? This might return the bill. It is a bill, actually. Okay, so we don't need to do this at all then. So we'll call this old bill. Okay, fantastic. All right. So we're gonna take this old bill and we're gonna fill in the information mostly the same into the new bill. So the name, the site, the amount, the frequency, those are all still the same. But the main thing that we're changing is the due date. And so based on the frequency, if it's yearly, we're gonna add a year to it. But if it's monthly, we're gonna add a month to it. And then that'll create the new due date. So now, in theory, let's make sure our dev server didn't crash because I suspect that it may have at some point. Nope, still good. Okay. So in theory, when we pay this bill, what's going to happen is this SRP bill that says it's currently due in a month is going to get marked paid, and we should see a new row pop up that's an unpaid SRP bill that says due in 2 months. That's the plan. Let's find out what happens. It's magic. It's magic. Look at that. Due in 2 months. SRP. Paid. Freaking works. Freaking works. Nice. Okay. So what's next? Fantastic question. I don't know what I changed on create, but... Well, there's a couple of things. Number one is I really don't want to see bills, paid bills show up on this unless I just paid them, right? So let's try and tweak the let's try and tweak the logic here just a little bit and filter some of these things out. So right now in our loader on this page, we're doing a find many, but we're not passing in any filters, right? So maybe let's try and do that. Let's say where paid is true, or paid is false. Let's save this here. Okay. That definitely works. But I wonder if... I wonder how we do an OR on this. Let's pop over to the doc here. So, I actually want to look at find many now. Find unique, find many. Order by, skip. We're going to want to do order by as well at some point. Let me just jot that down in our editor. Order by. Definitely going to happen. Select include where. Need to know what this user where input looks like. How do I find this? It's probably on the right hand side here somewhere, right? Nope. This is not particularly helpful for me. I need to know what a user where input actually has. But it doesn't look like they have any reference for it here. Can't imagine it's in the schema reference, right? No. This is totally different. Yeah, this is very not helpful. Because what I would like to do here is I want to provide an or. I want to say, give me all of the bills that are unpaid, or the paid bills that that showed up recently. We could always do 2 queries for that though, right? So maybe that's the faster line to get to where we want to be. So we could say unpaid bills const recently paid bills. And here we'll say prisma.bill.find if any, where paid is true and due date is greater than or equal. Document reference time again. So I saw some yeah, actually we want less than or equal. Okay, so we say where due date, and we make this an object, then we say LTE, and then we pass in today's dates. Actually, we would want to be greater than, right? Okay, so we make this an object, and we say greater than or equal to, and then what do we want? Like 3 days ago, maybe? So let's do subtract days. Sub days, right? Sub days. And import that, and then this will be today. 3. So I either want unpaid bills, or I want recently paid bills. So I'm not looking at the editor. That helps. So here I want if the bill is paid, then if the due date was in the last 3 days, then I still want to see this. That's what this is saying. And so then we'll say we need all bills, and this is equal to just unpaid bills plus recently paid bills. Save that. Okay. So we end up getting this, which is technically accurate, but we did some weird stuff where we marked bills that are due in the future as paid. And so we're getting some strange results here. So maybe let's try and do some, erase this data and try with some more straightforward, realistic examples here. So I'm just going to truncate the data on the database here. And we'll refresh our page. This will also give us a some good insight to what happens if nothing shows up. Does the page blow up, or does it still work? It still works. Okay, great. We're also going to need to add a link to the create page at some point on the main page here, so that we can actually get to it. So SRP, the amount here is $200. Website is... Do need to find the real website for that. And we're going to say that the due date was the 1st. And it's a monthly bill, so we're going to create bill. Okay. So this was due 18 days ago. All right, let's create a new bill. You know what? It's time. We're just going to add a create button. Let's do that. Up at the top, perhaps? Of the page. Say link to equals crates. Want this from... Yeah, React Router DOM. There we go. Okay. say create bill. We'll style this nicely at some point here. All right, so we've got a create bill there now. Fantastic. So now we at least have a link that we can go to the create bill, right? And then come back. Okay. So now we've got SRP, and when we pay this one, it should go away because the due date was more than 3 days ago, right? So let's create one more bill that does meet those criteria to see if this actually works the way that we had hoped it would. So we'll say the due date for this one was yesterday, and again, the bill is monthly. All right, so we've got 2 bills now. So when we pay SRP, what we expect is for the old bill to just get filtered out. It should no longer show up, but we should get a new bill that says it's due, you know, in 20 days or something like that. In 12 days, yep, that's what happened. But now when we pay this HOA, what we should see is a new row that says HOA is due next month. And also, we should see the paid bill because it was due within the last 3 days and we paid it. That is exactly what happened. Paid. Fantastic. Now, the ordering here is strange, so let's fix the ordering. So we saw in the documentation that there was an order by clause that we could use. And so that's what I want to do. Let's say, where's our loader? Here's our loader, order by. Well, I mean, we're actually doing 2 queries, right? So an order by is going to be weird. We actually want to sort the combination, right? We want to sort the both of those lists. So what we'll do is let's bring in JavaScript's standard lib, which is called, whoa, why did this happen? Stop doing what you're doing, okay. Which is Lodash. Okay, great. Now we've got Lodash in here. And we'll use Lodash for its sorting functions. So what we'll be able to do is we have all bills here. We're gonna be able to call sort on this, and we're going to pass in due dates. Sort, I want you to bring this in from Lodash. It's not, oh, actually it's sort by, isn't it? No suggestions, interesting. Usually it's better about this kind of thing. Oh, because we didn't install types for Lodash, that's why. npm install types / Lodash -d. Here we go. Now it's happier. Aha. My editor was trying to help me, but it didn't know how. All right, so now what we're saying is we're going to take all bills, and we're going to take the combination of the recently paid and the unpaid bills, and we're going to sort those all by due date, and that's what will return to the front. And so now, if we look at our split screen, we can see that is indeed what happened, right? So the HOA bill was due 1 day ago that we just paid. We have an SRP bill that's due in 12 days that we could pay, and then we also have our HOA bill due in 28 days. Freaking sweet. Freaking sweet. I like it a lot. So this is almost back to the functionality that we had before in the old app that they broke, which I'm pretty excited about. But let's add in a couple more pieces here. So number one, I want to get this centered. It's still bugging me that it isn't. So I think what I'm going to do here is, let's go app only. I'm going to go into the dev console because I think this is going to be the easiest way to figure out how to get this thing to be centered. So, oh, I see what the problem is here. It's not getting in. So I think the problem here is grid row 1, 3. Yes, now it's big enough. So then all we need to say is display flex direction column justify content center. There we go. Okay. So that's what the problem was, is the grid row isn't on the form. So let's fix that. We'll swap back here. Then our index bill pay form. Strange. Ah. This should have been class name bill pay form the whole time. That's what was messing it up. All right, so fixed. Okay, so the other thing is hopefully, you know, when someday some of these bills will be paid off, or when I move, maybe my energy company changes or something like that. So a edit and a delete would both be fantastic. I'm not super worried about edit because I'm fine with just deleting and then creating a new bill. But I would like a delete button. That would be super nice. Doesn't really make a huge amount of sense to me to delete already paid bills. Those are just kind of historical record. So maybe this is also part of the paid. Okay. So now we get into some more stuff about Remix that's maybe a little different than what you're used to if you're just using React alone. So we're posting forms in order to make this stuff happen, but now we actually we're going to have two actions that we want to happen on this, because the other thing we want to do here is button delete. Right? This isn't going to work because of reasons. Let me fix those reasons. Okay. So now we want a delete button as well, right? But if we also have this delete button post to this to the same URL, how are we going to tell whether we want to be paying a bill or deleting a bill, right? And the answer is we need to change the method for this. Now, in HTML, there's some weirdness, which is there's actually several actions that you can take. You've got get, you've got post, you've got delete, you've got is it updates? Something like that. But HTML itself only supports two of those methods, which is get and post. In order to use the other methods, you have to use JavaScript. Now Remix makes this pretty easy though, because all we have to do is change it from lowercase f form to capital F form. And now we've created, this form is powered by JavaScript. There we go. And so now maybe we don't use post for this anymore, right? Maybe what we'll use instead is puts. Yeah, let's use put for that, I think. So for this one, we'll use method as put. And then for our other form, which we're going to have down here, for delete, we're going to say method equal delete. And then this is going to have some class name, bill pay delete, or bill delete, not bill pay. Okay, put our button up here. All right. So you can see, like, not a whole lot has changed in our UI here when we change from one form to another. And in fact, paying a bill should still work, and it does. Although our filter is not. Well, yeah, our filter is right. We once again paid a bill far into the future, so that's okay. So all this stuff is still working, but now we need to tweak stuff a little bit in order to make sure that it works the way that we want to. One thing to consider is, do we want to hard delete bills or do we want to soft delete them? Probably want to soft delete them just because hard deleting things, generally not a good practice in development, so. What that means is we now need a new part of our schema, right? What I also want to add here is deleted. And this is going to be another Boolean. And the default is again going to be false. And then we're going to need to update our database. So let's go to our terminal and we'll use the Prisma CLI for this. npx Prisma migrate dev. Migration, add soft delete. Great. Now we need to restart our dev server, which I forgot to do while we were in here. Let's do that real fast. Okay. So that should be good. We have a deleted flag now. So when we delete this thing, okay, great. Now how do we handle our action? So what we're going to want to do up here is in our action function, we're going to want to start and say, hey, which action are we even doing, right? Like, I don't know. So let's add some if statements here. So if request.method is equal to put request.method.toLowercase. No. Lowercase. There we go. Okay, great. So if the method is put, this is the stuff that we originally did, right? So this is what we want. Okay. So that's the original stuff we wrote. And then we want to say, all right, well, we also need to return to redirect here no matter what. And I think we're redirecting to slash either way, so maybe it's fine to just not even have it here, right? All right, but if the request method instead, to lowercase, is deletes, then we're going to want to do our delete stuff instead. So this is how we're going to differentiate between, you know, when we're paying a bill and when we're deleting a bill. And so what do we want to do on delete? Well, we can copy this code from update here. And in fact, some of this stuff is still the same, right? We're still going to need the ID. So we're going to have the ID either way, so we can pull this up. We're just going to handle it slightly differently when we get down here, right? So let's grab our update code, put this in our delete. Here, instead of saying paid is true, we're going to say deleted is true. And we don't really care about the old bill here, because we're not doing an update, or we're not doing a find after update like we are in the paid code. So we don't even need to do that. Okay. I feel like this should work in theory. So let's go ahead and delete this SRP that's due in a month. Chat? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. What happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. Let's take a look at our form down here. So in our update form, we have a hidden input that has the bill's ID in it, but in our delete one, we did not. So what was happening was when we were submitting our delete form, that ID didn't exist, right? And so then Prisma was like, hey, you didn't give me an ID, but you told me to update something by an ID that you didn't give me. I can't do that. And you know what? Fair play, Prisma. Fair play. All right, but now we fix that. Let's see if our delete works. When we press the button, nothing happened. Why did nothing happen? Well, we're not filtering out deleted bills, right? So let's do that. Deleted, false. We'll do the same thing on the recently paid build here too. Hey, there it goes. Delete. Haha. Success. We can delete those bills now. Fantastic. But you know, I'm still a little unhappy. And the reason why I'm unhappy is I don't really like how it looks. Let's add SRP back in here. And today is fine, sure. We'll create this bill. So I don't like the delete is down here and that the pay is over here, and I don't like how the delete looks either. So let's maybe see if we can reconfigure the style here a little bit. So what I'm thinking is that, you know, this side over here with the pay button will be more like actions, right? Like here are the things you can do with this. I definitely want pay to be much bigger, and I want delete to be much smaller, and very obvious that you would press delete, because I don't want to accidentally delete my bills and then not pay them, because that would be unfortunate for me. So let's see if we can think about how we want to kind of lay this out. So I'm thinking we keep the name of the bill and the due date on the left hand side here, but then we maybe want this delete over here. We want it to be a smaller button than the pay, and we want it to probably be like spread out here a little bit. So we can handle this in a bunch of different ways. Maybe the easiest way to do this would be just to have this side over here, this form, be a like a flex layout that's going horizontally. We could also style it as a grid if we wanted to. But I think a flex layout might work perfectly well. Let's see if we can get that to function. Now, the first thing that we'll need to do is, since we want to add a layout to the side, right now we're just using a fragment. We'll want to use a div here instead, so that we can actually give this div a class name. And we'll say bill actions, maybe. Okay. So now they're already doing something, but not really what we want. I think here we can just change this style from bill pay button to just bill button, because I think we want both of the buttons to be styled in a similar fashion. And then here we say class name equal bill button. Okay. So that styles our buttons relatively similar. But we still don't have them in the layout that we want. And so let's style this bill actions. We could use another grid for this, but I think flexbox will be enough. So let's say display flex, flex direction. You don't have to declare a row, but we'll do it anyways. Okay. A little bit of what we want, but let's justify content. Let's say space around, and then let's align the items in the middle. Okay. It's looking a little bit better, although looks like our align items is not. It is align items, right? It is align content. I think it's align items is the correct. But once again, we run into this problem of things don't want to center. The classic CSS problem. Okay. I'm surprised to see this because Flexbox usually just handles this particular problem. But something is wonky here. Let's see. Let's use the inspector and see if we can figure out what it is. Okay. It looks like it's the. I know what the problem is. we want built actions to have these on them. There we go. Which means we don't need them on build pay form. Yeah, and then over here in crates, the build pay form here, we want build actions. Okay. That's looking good. Everything center deletes is good. I do want delete to be smaller though, and so I think what I'm gonna do instead of having delete is we're gonna do. I'm gonna go grab a heavy cross emoji here. Cross emoji. Yeah, cross mark emoji. That's what I want. Copy and paste. Save. There we go. That is ugly. Maybe we'll just do this. Okay, but then I do want it to be we'll call this, we'll also add a delete class to this. Save view, and then in our index we'll say button.deletes, color red. Let's adjust this color to be something that's a little lighter to go with our color palette that we've been using here. And then also font weight here, it's bold. All right. That's looking okay, right? So you got the pay and you've got the delete. We could adjust the padding and stuff around those a little bit if we wanted to. For instance, we could say, instead of space around, we could say space between. We're going to push them both to the far sides, which keeps pay a little closer, but then pushes the delete way to the side, which is maybe okay. Not sure it's strictly necessary though. I might keep just space around. I don't like how paid and pay don't line up if I do that though. So maybe, yeah, maybe space between is the way to go. Okay. I think it's good enough at the moment. Okay, so we should be able to then, assuming this is still correctly working, right, is we can come over here and click delete, and this should just go away, right? Yep. There we go. Can't do anything with these ones because they're already paid. Nothing to do with those. Let's add our HOA back. Amount $80. Website is Google, and it's due today. Okay, great bill. All right, we should also be able to pay it. Yep, and then we get a new one here. Pay that one, 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 pay that one. Wow, my HOA is paid like through next year. I like it. Sweet. I think this is working out. This is working pretty freaking well. I like it. I mean, we can style the crate bill a little bit better, I think. I definitely like that idea, so let's do that. All right, so this is our bill. This is our crate bill link. I don't think we need this inline styling here at all. Let's get rid of that. Interesting. Okay. I mean, that's fine, but let's give this a class name of layout. Create layout here, and this was text line center, and then what, padding, something like that. Yeah, Okay. And then we just want... We want to create some space around create bill, right?